Eugene Schuster at 27 South Drive in Great Neck, New York. Gene was born on the 24th of November 1918 in New York City and served in World War II with the U.S. Army Signal Corps. My name is Commander Paul Zucker of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, who will be doing the filming and interviewing. Today is August 20th. Gene, can you just tell me a little bit about your background, where you grew up, and what you did in your early years?
Yeah, I was born in New York City. Grew up mostly in the Bronx. Went to high school, DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx. Then graduated NYU. Went to Harvard Law School. In 1939 to 41. So I had 2 years of law school, and then I was drafted September 9, 1941. And at the time, I didn't think of trying to get out of the draft because we were only drafted for 1 year. So it just seemed like a little vacation for me. And then, of course, Pearl Harbor, December 7th, 41. So that 1 year changed to almost 5 years in the Army.
And at the time that you were drafted, how old were you?
21.
You were 21, and you were commissioned at that time, or?
No, I was drafted as a private. Went to Fort Monmouth, and then with my, of course, I had 2 years of law school, and knew how to type rather well, and I was assigned to the Pentagon building, to the Pentagon, where I was a cryptographic officer. No, I was enlisted and then went to back to Fort Monmouth to be commissioned. Then I was sent back to the Pentagon. I was first when I graduated, I had orders going to Tampa, but they soon changed that to back to the Pentagon, where I became a cryptographic officer.
And just what did a cryptographic officer do during your tenure?
Well, we learned during my enlisted period to type and use the Sagaba, which was a very refined code machine. The mechanics of it are that when you type in English at one end, in the input part, it came out over the radio in code. It was a very effective code machine, and we had to be very adept, not only at typing, but using the machine. Of course, you need a radio personnel on the other end to send the messages.
Sure. Okay, so using this, what you learned from the machine, the Sagaba machine, you were assigned to a ship with the 3 other officers then?
We were assigned to the USS Blue Ridge.
Okay, I'm going to bring up a picture here of the Blue Ridge. You can keep talking.
And you can see from the ship, it's a Liberty hull, but it has a lot of radio antennas, etc. And that's where the headquarters was set up when we went to the Southwest Pacific. Okay. The other 2 ships went to other theaters and also named mountains. One was called the Rocky Mount, and the other was the Katakan. The same theory on all 3 for amphibious warfare.
Okay, and these essentially were the headquarters ships that the Admiral Bobby was on, and basically all the war effort to what was conducted was basically managed.
That's right. Admiral Bobby was the admiral of the 7th Amphibious Force. That's the force that handled the landings at Leyte Gulf, We went overseas in late 43, early 44.
And you went to Australia, you went to Brisbane at that time?
We went to Brisbane to start the Philippine invasion with the ultimate aim of returning MacArthur to the Philippines.
Okay, and then after you left Australia, you went to Leyte Gulf?
The entire invasion started. We had a lot of ships, not only at Brisbane, but coming in from Hawaii and across. So there was a coordinated invasion of the Philippines, starting at Leyte Gulf. We were at the southernmost end, the 7th Amphibious Force. Halsey was the 5th Amphibious Force, the north part of Leyte Gulf. So we had the nucleus of the Navy was we were guarding the southern part and directing the 7th Amphibious Force, and Halsey was the northern end. Was on the northern end with his battleships coordinating the 5th Fleet invasion.
So do you recall the battle itself, the very famous battle of Leyte Gulf? Were you there at the time?
It was a very famous battle because several things happened. Number one, the first hint of any defensive maneuvers by the Japanese started with the invasion of a big Japanese fleet coming down from the north. This was well to the north, almost to Alaska. And they were coming down, and Halsey, apparently we knew about the invasion of the Japs because we had the messages through the code room. And we knew that the Jap fleet was coming down, and Halsey was going up to meet it. And we didn't have any protection on the eastern end. On the eastern end of Leyte Gulf, there were just a couple, 2 or 3 Jeep carriers guarding there. But when Halsey went north to meet the Jap fleet, we were very concerned about the portion in the north where Halsey was supposed to be guarding the battle of Leyte Gulf. Don't forget that we were landing personnel at this time. We lost a lot of casualties there, by the way, just in the landing. But it turned out to be a very successful landing. However, when we had heard that Halsey was meeting the Jap fleet up north, we were concerned about the protection of the northern end of Leyte Gulf, which he was supposed to be protecting. So we sent a message from our code room to Halsey's flagship, and the message read, "Are you still guarding Surigao Strait?" And the answer came back, negative, which was the most horrific message we ever received.
Here you were totally
we were open to invasion from the north, which is exactly what happened. There was another interesting thing that caused him to leave. The Army, we had Army support, Army air support, and they went after the Jap fleet in the north. And as far as the intelligence was concerned, the Army intelligence, I guess, and Halsey thought that the Jap fleet coming in from the west, which Halsey was guarding, they thought that the Army Air Force had knocked out that Jap fleet that was coming in. Of course, they turned around and started to go back. However, they regrouped. And they came steaming in from the north. And when we could see them coming, and every man on our ship was given a rifle, and we were going to land and do what we could to escape these big Jap battleships. But a miracle happened.
Were you frightened at that time, by the way?
We were not only frightened, we were scared shitless.
Yeah.
All of us, even Admiral Bobby. So what actually happened was this Jap fleet came in and sank those two Jeep carriers, and we thought we were really in for it. But a miracle happened. After they finished off these two carriers, they turned around and apparently they were given about an hour to go in and go back, do what they could to harass, and they were given an hour, and the Japanese mind, which seemed not to be too agile, they didn't give any credit to these ships that were in there. They were given an hour, and they left in an hour. They steamed out, and we resumed the operation. In the meanwhile, our southern, we had battleships, old battleships, guarding Leyte Gulf at the south. And the strait in the south from the west, those ships couldn't make a concerted drive at us because they would have outmanned us. They had to come in single file. It was a narrow strait.
Oh, so they left themselves wide open.
Wide open for crossing the T, which is a great maneuver, where one fleet comes in single file, and the other fleet is in a T formation and able to annihilate those ships. So it was a great victory there for us, and the total result was that the Jap fleet was decimated. It was badly beaten up. Halsey was both a hero and a goat at the same time.
And so during that period, you must have been very frantically sending messages back and forth in the code room.
Sure.
And throughout that period, as far as you know, the Japanese never picked up this code?
Oh, no, never picked up the code.
But when you were sending codes, and let's say the ships were being blown up by the Japanese, were you in touch with those men on the other ship at the time?
Oh, they were all killed. That was a tragedy because those were very gallant ships, very gallant men, and of course a Jeep carrier they don't have many planes. It's not like a real carrier, and they were slaughtered. So. They were very brave, gallant, because they sent their planes after the Japs, no matter what, never to return.
And when you look back at that now, do you feel that Halsey had made a mistake in going after this decoy?
Well, in deference to Halsey, they had reports from the Army, Air Force, that fleet up there had been defeated and was returning, that they were returning. So he made a tactical decision to take his whole fleet up to, he became sort of a hero and a goat at the same time. But he was a great hero because he defeated many battleships up there. If you read the details, we all won a great victory.
So it was a great risk, even though he didn't coordinate it with Admiral Bobby at the time, who left him hanging. But
yeah, it would have been nice if he left a couple of battleships behind, but he took his whole fleet up.
All right. Now, at the time, at that point in time, then you were after that battle, you were getting you were then preparing for the mainland assault. Is that
no? Before that, when we defeated. When we defeated the fleet and landed our personnel at Leyte Gulf, part of the strategy of the landing was to go around Manila, go north around Manila and attack. We had another landing at Leyte Gulf, and we trimmed the Japs there, and Leyte Gulf is on the island of Luzon.
Yes.
And we had, by this time, MacArthur was on I think he was on the Birmingham, a cruiser. Now, we sent in, when the Japs were defeated in Luzon, the General MacArthur joined Admiral Bobby, and we went in with LCTs to land MacArthur at Leyte Gulf.
And this is what I'm going to show right now, if you just hang by with me for 1 second. Let me see if I can pull this out. This is a picture that you just gave me of General MacArthur in the center here.
Correct.
With Admiral, what was the Admiral?
Barbie, B-A-R-B.
Over here. The landing at Luzon, and somewhere in this background here, on the landing ship, you are joining both Barbie and MacArthur in the landing at Luzon, and that was in January 9th of 1945.
Right.
And this is now a magazine. Okay. So at that point...
Well, we won that battle. Then we finally, and by that time, we had dropped a bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's at that juncture, the plans for the invasion of Japan were set in motion, and we all received the battle plans, and there were going to be an enormous amount of American fatalities, because a frontal attack on the Bay of Tokyo was going to be a bloodbath. And they anticipated about 500,000 or more, 500,000 or more fatalities of our troops. So dropping the bomb saved a lot of our lives, and we thank President Truman and the fellows that dropped the bombs. They saved our lives. And that's why now, when a lot of the sane people or peaceniks decry dropping the bombs for humanitarian reasons, we argue with them, because it saved our lives, saved many lives.
Including your own at that time. So
Absolutely.
you arrived back at Pearl Harbor then?
No, we went back to, don't forget, the war wasn't quite over. We went back to Hawaii, Fort Shafter. And now we're in a position of occupying the Philippines. General MacArthur was redrawing the Constitution in our favor, and he was a great political figure in reshaping the Japanese Constitution. And at that time, the war ended, and we went back home.
So you were discharged then, and then what did you do with your life at that point?
Then I went back to Harvard Law School, finished the year, and that was paid for by Uncle Sam.
By the GI Bill?
GI Bill, and the GI Bill also contained reference to any law students that were interrupted by the Army. Don't forget that my second year at Harvard was 5 years before I actually was in 42. So first we didn't have to take the bar exam. We were admitted to the bar, and I got my law school degree as of 1942. So then I went back to being a lawyer.
Okay. And then along came the Korean War.
Korean War, I had, foolishly or not, I had kept my lieutenancy in the reserve, but I was told at the time that it didn't have anything to do with me being in the active or inactive reserve. They called me up in the Korean War to build a code room at Camp Kilmer. So I was stationed in Camp Kilmer for over a year with my family.
Camp Kilmer was where?
In Jersey.
In Jersey.
Yeah.
And were you married?
Oh, yeah.
Had you married before you went into World War?
I got married when I became an officer.
Oh,
At Fort Monmouth, we got married. Lil and I got married.
Okay.
See, she wouldn't marry an enlisted man. She had to be an officer.
I see. And so that when you went to the Korean War, were your children, did you have children at that time?
Yeah, I had 2 children at the time. What we did, we were living in Stuyvesant Town, and when I was called up, we rented, although we weren't supposed to, but wartime was wartime. And we rented our apartment in Stuyvesant Town, and we all lived together at Camp Kilmer. But I didn't go over it all. I was taking care of the code room, and then the Korean War ended. I'm back to the law.
And the code room that you set up in the Korean War, you was using the same code machines as we...
That's right.
The Sigaban?
Sagaba.
Sagaba machine. Uh-huh. And how long did you stay in Korea?
I was in Korea. I was
in the Korean War. How long?
Korean War, a year and a half.
A year and a half.
Then back to Stuyvesant Town, back to the law.
Okay, and then you came out, and how did you feel that these experiences in both the World War II and Korea has affected your life?
Well, it took a big chunk out of it, and a big chunk out of my civilian life, but I was patriotic, and I thought I did a lot in the war effort, and it was gratifying.
Did you keep in touch with any of the people, the kind of friendships that you had during the war? Was there anything in particular that you remember in those friendships that have carried over?
Not much. I knew that Joel Satz moved to Florida. He was one of our officers, and I was in touch with him for a while. And there was another, John Straub was another one of our lieutenants in the code room. He was an actor. He became an actor. And other than that, there wasn't much.
So the camaraderie and the relationships. You never joined the VFW or any of the Veterans of Foreign War organizations or anything like that?
Well, I'm sort of ex officio in the Jewish War Veterans.
Jewish War Veterans.
And don't forget, I also became back to civilian life, and when we moved to Great Neck, I became a village justice in Great Neck Estates.
Okay.
So I was as a matter of fact, after 30 years of being a village justice, I retired as the village justice, but they made me what they call acting village justice as sort of an honor, an honorable appointment.
Now, you just brought up the Jewish War Veteran Organization. I imagine that during World War II and the Korean War, there were very few Jews among the fighting men. Is that correct? Or?
Yes, but on of our four lieutenants in our code room, 3 were Jewish.
Is that right? Uh-huh. What about your experience during the Korean? Was that similar there, in setting up the code?
No, there were very few people there.
Uh-huh. Okay. So, given all your experience in your life during wartime, were you ever worried at any point in time that we might lose the war, and what would happen to both you and your family back home?
Well, I had a feeling we'd never lose the war. I was always very optimistic about it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now, being in a code room, how was it? How did you manage to send communications back and forth? How were you able to keep up with what was happening, let's say, in Europe with the war?
We had a newspaper aboard the ship, and they got it from the radio.
From what radio? How did you get a radio signal down in the South Pacific?
I really don't know. I think we got it from Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
I think we got the news from Hawaii, and they published it. Oh, they may have. They had. You know, when we sent the message from the Sagaba through the radio in code, we were also able to send messages without code.
Oh, I see.
And they could send those messages. There's a machine, we still use it, that where you type into the radio, and it comes out in English.
Okay, so you were basically getting information about what was happening in America.
Oh, yes.
What was happening.
Oh, yes. We even got the scores, the games.
Scores,
yeah, sure.
So there, the camaraderie. You were on a headquarters ship, of course, and so you weren't really amongst the troops. You had a kind of a different level of of people around you. Was there much camaraderie or concern among
Oh,
them?
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, camaraderie, not some, yeah, camaraderie, concern.
And
Listen, we were on
how
a,
hours a day did you work typically on your ship duties when you were?
we had full shifts.
You had so you were on like an 8-hour. It was like a regular 8-hour shift. And,
Yeah.
And it was 7 days a week.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
We didn't have any vacations.
No, it's a good thing we didn't have unions in those days.
That's right.
Well,
there were some humorous things happening on board. For example, we had an ice cream machine on board, and that was a big thing, ice cream on the ship. And they put out a memorandum. See, we had three tiers of personnel: the enlisted men, junior officers, and senior officers. And they put out a memorandum that the enlisted men could have 1 ball of ice cream a day, the junior officers could have 2 balls, and the senior officers 3 balls of ice cream. And that was put out in a memorandum. And we were so amused by that we sent that back by radio. Oh no, in a letter, letters were censored.
Uh-huh.
But we sent back that memorandum to the New Yorker, and the New Yorker used to print "War is Hell" department, and they printed this memorandum: 2 balls of ice cream for this, 3 balls of ice. It was printed and under it said USS Blue Ridge memorandum data. And you can understand the consternation in the Navy.
Sure.
Now, see, the Army sent it, but nobody knew that, because it wasn't censored. So there was a big investigation. They called all the officers and wanted to know who sent that, and everybody played dumb. So
of all your war experiences, what was the most memorable?
My what?
Your most memorable war experience, the one that has.
Oh, that message negative. That was the most memorable. That was the most amazing.
Okay. All right. Given that this film now will be for posterity, for future historians to look upon, and your grandchildren. You have grandchildren?
Oh yeah, 7.
You have 7 grandchildren. Wonderful.
And a beautiful wife.
And very good. Given all that, is there some message that you'd like to leave for posterity, given your experience in life and how the war affected you?
Yes. We should all be very patriotic, love the country, and thank God for the atomic bomb that saved our lives, but now should be banned forever.
With that, Gene, our country thanks you for your patriotism that you've shown us over the years. This is Eugene Schuster signing off.
Thank you very much.